Hello, y'all, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Marquita here with a late nights, early mornings, and a book review for you. So this particular book that I'm going to be reviewing is Internment by Samira Ahmed. And this book is actually considered a young adult novel. However, there are so many things that are in this book, and the topic itself is very thought-provoking, and I think that even as adults, you can definitely get something out of it. It is a very easy read, but it is so many layers inside this book and so many things that can be unpacked, as well as so many things that relate to modern day or current day issues that are happening in our society right now, particularly dealing with race relations and politics, along with how that ties into the government and current or recent elections. So we'll go ahead and get into it. Again, this is Internment by Samira Ahmed, and I purchased this book off Amazon, but you can definitely find it in Barnes & Nobles, any other stores where they sell books. So the main character we have is Layla Amin, and she's a 17-year-old student, high school student. Her family, she's the only child in her family. She has a mom and dad. Her dad is a professor. His name is Ali Amin. He's a professor of writing and poetry at the local university where they live. And her mom, whose name is Sophia Amin, is kind of like a massage therapist / kind of natural type person with meditation, all those types of things. And they are just your average family, working, going to work, going to school type family. And recent events have put them on what is called a registry because they identify as part of the Muslim community. So in the story, a recent presidential election has occurred. And in that election, the president that was put in office has some issue against the Muslim community. Now, it's never stated as to why he feels like they are a threat or why he has an issue with that particular group, but a census has recently occurred as well, very similar to what has happened in real life. We had a census come out and everyone had to take it. And of course, usually when the census comes out, it's a positive thing. That is how we know kind of like what America looks like at the time when the census is done. So, for example, if you've ever used Ancestry.com or any type of service such as that to, trace your family history, look into things like that, some of the information that you get comes from a census. So if your family members have filled out a census, then you might know where they were living, how many people were in their household, if that person was married, had children, who they were, what their occupation was, their race, religion, all of those types of things can be found in your census information. And typically, no one thinks twice about taking it. You just take it and turn it in and keep moving with life. But the last census that came around definitely made people a little bit nervous. And part of the reason that it made people nervous is because we didn't know what was going to happen with that information. There was a lot of race relations and tensions going on, especially dealing with the immigrant population. And then you had just things that were going on in the Black community with the police and all of that. So all of these things happening in our country made something as simple as like census information. It made everybody question, what exactly is going to be going on with this? What's going to happen? How is this information going to be used? And can and will it be used in a negative way or against me or, someone in that situation that fills out the census? Now, the way things are looking, people are really concerned about the potential for that data to be used as a target, to turn them into targets, or used to, do something bad to people or negative in a negative light. Well, in the book Internment, like I said, they just had a newly elected president who has for some reason deemed that people in the Muslim community are a threat. Now, it makes a reference to a real case that happened in America called KOREMATSU versus the United States. Now, in the book, the Attorney General uses the results of that case to support the relocation of the characters in the book who are of the Muslim community. So once they completed the census, it probably happened like a year prior to this situation in the book. Basically, they were singled out, and they made a separate list of people who identified as Muslim and put them on the registry. So for the government did. And so at this point, as things started to unfold, those who were on the registry began to suffer consequences such as losing their jobs. They were kind of shunned by friends, colleagues, and whatnot. So things just got really weird for those who were put on there because, again, the government was pushing some rhetoric that for some reason that the people of this particular community, the Muslim community, were threats, and they were, they were being singled out for whatever reason. So eventually it gets to the point where the president begins to, or where they begin to round up people who were on the registry, or in other words, aka those who are identified as Muslim, and send them to these camps. Layla and her family, along with other people who identified as Muslim on that census, get sent to these camps, which of course are called internment camps, and they're in Independent, California, which that name in itself is ironic because of course these people are losing everything in terms of independence and freedom. They're losing all of that. The camp is called Camp Mobius, and it's set up, they're living in what they identified as FEMA trailers. So, after natural disasters, you have those trailers, and they are not allowed to have their cell phones, any connection with the outside world whatsoever. So any information they get is filtered in through TVs and through what the camp director wants them to see and know. They were not allowed to take anything other than one bag when they were rounded up. So imagine somebody just coming to your house and saying, you can take one bag of stuff and that's it. You don't know where you're going, you don't know why you're going, and you don't know how long you're going to be there. So that's how that situation happens. And at the camp, they try to make it seem like, oh, you're just being relocated here. We're going to form this new community. I'm sorry, but a regular community does not have an electric fence around it, which in this case, that is how the camp is set up. There's an electric fence around it, and there's also exclusion guards, which are the guards that are sent there. They are different members of different branches of the armed forces that are sent to work at this camp, and they basically just are there to keep the order, make sure that the people there at the camp don't try and do anything crazy, don't try and revolt, rise up, whatever, and that they follow the rules that are set forth at the camp. And they also serve as protection against anybody on the outside, because what most of the people on the inside don't know, in Camp Mobius, meaning the people that have been sent there, what they don't know is that on the outside, society or people in society are protesting and saying, you know what, we don't agree with this, and this is not okay to take people and put them in these basically concentration camps for no other reason other than the fact that they are of a certain religion or a certain background. They haven't done anything. They're not prisoners. They haven't committed any crimes. They have not given any reason to be considered a threat. So you have protesters happening. You have what is called Occupy Mobius, just like Occupy Wall Street occurred. So you have people protesting. You have people speaking up and fighting for the rights of those who are in these camps. But the people in the camps don't really know, because again, their information is very filtered, and they're not allowed to, make phone calls to the outside. If they do, anything they do is monitored. So even within their trailer, the only place there's not a camera is in the bedrooms, but there are cameras in the common spaces, the living areas. So, anybody could watch and see what they're doing at any time. So there's very little privacy there. And of course, it's intentional, hence why they're in that camp. I think the idea behind it was to say, okay, if we think these people are a threat, just like with the Japanese, if we put them all in one place, we can keep an eye on them, and that way we can protect ourselves from them. But again, what are you protecting yourselves from? Because they haven't done anything. The people in this camp are not criminals. They haven't done anything other than identify it with a certain religion. So they're living life in the camp. The director wants it to try and be like this, happy-go-lucky community that they have isolated these people to, but they're not treated very well. Not only do they have the filter information, they don't have access to the outside world, but also thinking about like showering. They are only allowed 5 minutes to shower, and the water cuts off after 5 minutes. So now, how can you tell me you want me to try and resume a normal life here when I can't even do basic things like take a shower, eat the types of food that I would normally eat. They're provided food, but it's whatever they get. It's not like they can go to McDonald's, and grab a bite to eat, or order something or cook something that they would typically cook or eat. They're just given food and they have to eat it or not have any food that day. So those are the types of things that they're dealing with, along with the fact that you have armed guards and the fact that you are living inside of an area that is surrounded by an electric fence. None of that is normal. None of that would encourage me to be able to function, like a regular day-to-day situation. So Layla is like she's a 17-year-old teenager, high schooler. She is like any other teenager. She has her emotions. She reacts and thinks based on feeling, emotion. She does not always think things through. She does not think about the consequences of her actions. Most times, sometimes she does, but most of the time she doesn't, which is very true to most teenagers. That's just part of being a teenager. And so I do appreciate the fact that the author, while giving her some adult characteristics in terms of, some leadership roles and how she develops throughout, she still keeps that fact that she's a teenager. And sometimes she's just reacting in the moment based on how she feels without thinking things through. And that part is very accurate with a lot of people. But we do know that sometimes people like that are good. And sometimes doing those things are good because fear can hold you back. But it can also help move you forward. Because she did think about, at times, if I get caught, what could happen to me? It could be something as severe as death, or it could be just a very bad, a worse situation than what I'm in. Or it could, maybe they don't bother me, but they hurt me by hurting my parents. So those are things that she did think about from time to time before doing something, but it was a risk that she was willing to take to fight for her freedom and also to get the word out that this is what life is like in here for those who were, on the outside, who may know that these camps exist, but maybe didn't know how bad things were, because the government, of course, was trying to paint it as if these were these great places and everything's all good. The people are living in harmony. We're good here. It's all great. They have a good life, all of that. No, they don't. One thing is that Layla starts to make friends, and she also picks up on people who, aren't afraid as well. They're like her, and they aren't afraid to speak out. They aren't afraid to take those risks. And I think when you think about any kind of movement that has happened in history, whether it be in America or any other country, you have people who had to not be afraid to take risks. It's not that they didn't know that death was a very real possibility, or even, things could be worse than death, being tortured, being, beaten, abused, your family, lives on the line as well. But if those people didn't take those risks, if they didn't weigh the risk and say, hey, I might not make it, but at least this will bring attention to the situation. And that's kind of Layla's mindset, is even if they kill me, like, that's going to bring attention to what's going on at these camps. That's going to make people look at this and say, why are people dying? Why are people disappearing? And we don't know where they went, and we haven't heard or seen them anymore. So that was kind of how Layla felt about it. She's like, well, if I'm going to die anyway, then I'm going to go out and somebody's going to know. You're going to know I was here. Teenagers and young adults can also have power, and they can also make change. You don't have to be a political figure. You don't have to be necessarily an adult or in a position of power to make a change and have your voice heard. And I think the important big picture takeaway is that, when things are not right, you need to resist. And if you look at the cover, you see Layla's hat, and it says resist. And I think part of that is just a reminder that, like, when things are wrong, you shouldn't just go along with them just to make it easy on yourself. Like, some of the people in the camp, they didn't want to disrupt what was going on. They didn't agree with what happened to them, but they also were afraid, or just didn't want to disrupt what they had. Once they had kind of gotten in there, and they're like, okay, even though this is not great, we're here, we're alive, we're just gonna ride it out, we're gonna make it work. And Layla's like, no, that's not okay. And there were some people with her that were like, no, we're not gonna do that either. And so they essentially were resisting, because they were resisting the government's idea that it was okay to do that, and that, they would not stand for that. And so I think that's where the power comes in from this story, is that, you know, sometimes we have to resist and it can have consequences. Layla did not get away. You know, that's one thing I can say about this book, is it didn't make Layla like this girl that got away with everything, or because she was a teenager she was exempt from certain things. No, Layla did suffer throughout this book at some points. She did. There was loss. She did suffer. There was loss to people close to her, but it was all for the cause. And so I think that's something to remember as well. The last two lines of the book, or not actually the story, but of the author's note, says, "The people united will never be defeated. Resist." And so I think what that's saying is, you know, go against things that are not right. Like, even if that's what even if the government's like, hey, this is the thing, like the government issued this, they said it was okay for these people to be bussed off, to be put in these concentration camps and whatnot, but it was wrong. And there were people who felt that way that were protesting. They were willing to go out there and sleep outside the camp. You know, they wanted to make it known. Social media this is a modern day written book, so they had social media. So things were being shown on social media. Some things that happened within the camp got out. Even though they didn't want it to get out, it got out. So remember the saying, what's done in the dark will come to light. That's kind of a saying for this book as well. But overall, I think it just brings awareness to the fact that if we don't pay attention to what's going on, if we don't understand history, and don't pay attention to the way things are going, history can repeat itself. The negative things of history can repeat itself. And we have control over that. We have control over it not happening, and we have control of stopping it when we see it start to happen. And so that's what happens in this book. Because think back, if, you know, things didn't go the way they did in this book, it's very possible that what was happening could continue. And who's to say that it wouldn't branch out to other groups of people that the government may decide to deem a threat? So that's something that we should always think about as people, is that, you know, when we see things happening to one group, even if it's not our group of people, we shouldn't feel like that, you know, well, that's them, that's their problem. No, because it could always easily be our problem as well. And I think history has shown us that, that just because one group gets targeted at one point, eventually it could be another group. So overall, this is a great book, and the fact that it does kind of mix or tie in what was really going on here and what has really gone on here in America, I'd say within the past 10 years or so, with politics and race relations and that type of thing. I think taking that information or taking those events in real life and weaving it into a fictional story is a great way to, you know, start the conversations on these things, and also bring awareness, and also teach advocacy. Any teachers out there, this is a great book for cross-curricular between history or social studies and English. I would definitely be more than happy to share ways to do that. I can definitely see it being on a banned book list somewhere in those places that do feel the need to ban things. It's probably already on there. I haven't paid any attention to those lists, but I'm sure if it's not already there, as soon as somebody reads it and gets their panties in a bunch, they will add it to the list. So go ahead and buy it now. Internment by Samira Ahmed. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will have more book reviews coming your way soon.